The payments industry moves fast. The economics behind it move even faster. Welcome to On the Wire, a show about the economics of payments, the institutions moving money, and the infrastructure underneath it all. This episode is produced by Payware using AI voice synthesis, built from primary research, technical documentation, and real market data. No studio, no hosts, just the content, clearly presented. Let's get into it.
Imagine owning like a really successful restaurant chain. You know, you're doing well.
Right.
You're processing about 12 million euros annually. The tables are packed. The food is great. But then at the end of the year, you pull up your balance sheet and you see this staggering line item.
Oh, the fees.
Yeah, you are paying 156,000 euros just in card processing fees.
Whoa.
156,000. And the wildest part is you probably just shrug and accept it as like the absolute standard cost of doing business.
Yeah, I mean, it's treated like the weather, right?
Yeah.
Merchants of all sizes just look at that fee and they assume it's this unchangeable force of nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than what it actually is, which is a highly engineered pricing structure, designed to extract maximum value.
Well, today we're actually looking at the radar to see how that weather is made. We're doing a deep dive into this massive structural analysis. It's titled The Economics of Payment Processing, a complete breakdown.
It really peels back the layers on an incredibly opaque industry.
It really does. So our mission here is to figure out exactly who takes a cut every time a card is swiped, why those costs are massively inflated by these legacy monopolies, and how a totally new technology account-to-account, or A2A payments, is basically poised to bypass this entire ecosystem.
It's a huge shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why your restaurant is bleeding 150 grand a year, we can't just look at the card terminal on the counter. We have to look at the incredibly crowded assembly line that gets triggered by a single swipe.
Right, because a card swipe feels completely instantaneous to you as a consumer.
Oh yeah, just a tap and you're done.
Exactly. And that completely masks the complexity. Behind the scenes, it's this fractured relay race involving 5 distinct corporate entities, and each one is basically operating its own toll booth.
Let's name these toll booths.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of hands in the cookie jar. First, you have the customer's bank, right? The issuing bank that actually holds your money. Second, the card network itself, so your Visa or MasterCard. Third is the acquiring bank, which is the merchant's bank.
Right.
Fourth, the payment gateway, the software connecting the website or the terminal to the financial system. And finally, fifth, the payment processor, the actual entity routing the transaction data.
That's 5 different stops.
Every time you buy a coffee, 5 different companies demand a slice of that one transaction. It's kind of like sending a letter in the mail, but the system forces you to pay the company that made the envelope.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Then you have to pay the mail carrier separately, then pay a fee to the post office building just for existing, and finally pay a licensing fee to the company that manufactured the recipient's mailbox.
And, to push that mail analogy even further, imagine if the envelope manufacturer also demanded a strict percentage of whatever cash you actually put inside that envelope.
Wow. Yeah.
That is essentially what an interchange fee is doing. The core structural flaw that we're looking at here is a total massive misalignment of incentives.
Because everybody wants their cut.
Exactly. Each of those 5 parties optimizes exclusively for their own revenue. The issuing bank demands the highest possible interchange fee. The card network wants its assessment fees to keep growing.
And the gateway tax on their fees, too.
Right. The gateway and processor tax on their per transaction costs and monthly subscription costs. Literally no one in that entire chain is optimizing for the merchant's total costs.
And the result is a system that severely punishes smaller operations.
It really does.
The breakdown in the source material highlights this disparity perfectly. A massive retailer with immense volume can leverage their size to negotiate effective rates down to, maybe 0.8 or 1.25%.
Which is still a lot of money at scale.
Sure, but if you're an independent cafe or just a mid-sized local retailer, you don't have that leverage at all. You're getting hit with rates between 1.0 and 2.5%. You're paying up to double the price for the exact same digital infrastructure, purely because you lack market power.
Yeah, it's a textbook market power dynamic. Because the API call the actual computer code communicating between servers, it costs the card network the exact same microscopic fraction of a cent.
Right.
Whether it's processing a €50 book purchase from a massive multinational retailer or just a local corner store, the independent store is basically subsidizing the system.
Okay, wait. I need to challenge this a bit.
Yeah.
Because we're painting these networks as pure rent seekers right now. But those networks are handling billions of transactions globally.
They are.
And they're dealing with massive, incredibly sophisticated fraud rings. So doesn't a 2.5% fee actually buy you a critical safety net? Like, don't issuing banks and networks need these high interchange fees, say 20 or 30 cents on a €100 purchase, just to fund fraud prevention and maintain that massive global infrastructure?
Well, so that is the industry's standard defense line. But when you look at the actual accounting reality detailed in the source, the math completely falls apart.
Really?
Yeah. Actual fraud losses across the system only account for about 0.05 to 0.15% of total volume.
Wait, that's it?
That's it. It's mere pennies on €100. So the vast majority of that fee isn't covering risk at all.
Okay, but what about the infrastructure?
Right. The argument about infrastructure costs, it kind of ignores the timeline of technology. Yes, back in the 1970s and 1980s, building physical leased line networks across the globe was astronomically expensive.
Sure, laying all that physical cable.
Exactly. So they set high percentage-based prices to recover those massive capital expenditures. But today, the marginal cost of routing an automated transaction over modern cloud architecture is practically zero. What's fascinating here is what it actually costs to move digital money securely between banks today when you don't have legacy monopolies involved.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, in Europe, a SEPA Instant bank transfer routes money directly between banking ledgers. It uses military-grade cryptographic security. It settles in real time.
And the cost?
The cost for that transaction is just 2 to 5 cents.
2 to 5 cents. Wow. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. If a modern secure bank transfer costs 5 cents at the absolute high end,
Yep.
and card networks are charging merchants anywhere from 80 cents to €2.50 for that exact same €100 movement. I mean, doing the math, the legacy networks are charging a 16x to 125x markup over the actual cost of moving digital money.
That's exactly it. The takeaway is that card processing doesn't inherently cost 2%.
Right.
It costs 2% because the current market structure allows it to. They basically absorbed all the efficiency gains of modern technology and turned it into pure profit margin.
Wow.
And a huge portion of those inflated interchange fees is actually just funneled right into consumer rewards programs.
Oh, like airline miles and cashback.
Exactly. So merchants are essentially being forced to fund their own customers' cashback points.
That is wild. And look, if the networks refuse to lower this 125x markup, they're basically begging for a structural disruption.
Right, absolutely.
So how exactly does this new account-to-account or A2A system bypass an infrastructure that is, I mean, let's face it, practically woven into global commerce?
Well, it collapses that 5-step assembly line we talked about down to a single connection. A2A utilizes open banking APIs. So instead of bouncing through a gateway and a processor and a card network and an acquiring bank, the merchant system just communicates directly with the customer's bank.
Ooh, skipping all middlemen.
Exactly. Let's look at the economics of a €100 transaction through an A2A network, like Payware, for example. The payment network instantly routes the request to your bank, you approve it, and the money moves directly to the merchant's bank.
And what's the fee on that?
The total merchant cost drops to a flat 0.5%, just 50 cents on that €100, and the money settles in 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Compared to what, waiting 2 or 3 business days for a standard card batch to clear?
Exactly.
I mean, I understand the massive appeal of a flat 50-cent fee and getting your cash instantly, but aren't these merchants taking on a massive technical risk?
How do you mean?
Well, if you strip away the payment gateways and the processors, what happens to PCI compliance? Like, isn't it incredibly dangerous for a merchant to operate without that traditional security net?
That's a great question, actually. The best way to understand PCI compliance is to think of it as this insanely expensive, highly regulated vault that you are forced to build to store toxic waste.
Toxic waste.
Yeah, the toxic waste in this scenario is a customer's credit card number. Because if a hacker gets it, they can ruin lives, drain accounts, all of that.
Right.
The absolute genius of the A2A security model is that it never even touches the toxic waste. There is literally no card data transmitted at all.
Because you aren't typing your number into a form.
Exactly. Because the authentication isn't happening on the merchant's website.
So where does it happen?
When you check out with A2A, the system kicks you over to your own highly secure mobile banking app. You use your Face ID or your fingerprint to authenticate the transaction directly with your own bank.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the merchant never sees your credentials, and the A2A network never holds them. You don't need a massive, expensive fraud prevention tool sitting at the checkout because your bank is already doing the verification on their own servers.
That makes total sense. That eliminates the data risk entirely. But what about the financial risk? Historically, acquiring banks charge a premium because they're essentially advancing funds to the merchant before the card transaction officially clears, like days later.
Right, that's what we call credit risk, and A2A structurally eliminates it through instant settlement.
Oh, because of the 10 seconds thing.
Exactly. If the money physically moves from the consumer's account to the merchant's account in 10 seconds, there's no waiting period. If there's no waiting period, nobody has to float the money.
Makes sense.
And without the need to float funds, the acquirer's credit risk just drops to zero, which means the justification for that specific risk premium, it just evaporates entirely.
Okay, let's see how this structural cost difference actively changes the survival math for real-world businesses. The source breaks down a few specific profiles, and the independent coffee shop is a great baseline.
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
So they're processing about 180,000 euros annually on cards. They're paying a steep 2.2% average fee, and they're waiting days for their cash to settle.
Which is a very familiar scenario for anyone in local retail. You know, they have thin margins and tight cash flow.
Right. And if that cafe shifts just 30% of their volume to A2A at a flat 0.5% rate, the math shows they save 918 euros a year. Now, 918 euros isn't going to take the cafe owner to the Bahamas or anything.
Probably not.
But we're talking about a business with maybe a 10% profit margin. That is pure bottom line growth.
Yeah.
And even more critically, they gain instant cash velocity.
That's the real key for them.
When the morning rush pays via A2A, the owner has that cash in their account instantly to buy fresh milk or pay staff that afternoon. And hey, that 12 million euro restaurant chain we mentioned at the start?
Oh, yeah. The 156,000 euro fee one.
Yeah. Shifting just 20% of their volume to A2A saves them over 22,800 euros a year in sheer overhead.
The working capital improvements for retail are just undeniable. But, you know, the most revealing scenario in the breakdown is actually the large subscription SaaS company.
Right.
This is where the sheer strategic weight of A2A really becomes apparent.
The SaaS company example is totally fascinating. They're doing 45 million euros a year in volume. They're big enough to have negotiated a really great card rate, 1.1%. So they're already paying far less per transaction than the coffee shop.
True. But if they achieve 40% A2A adoption, they still save almost 600,000 euros annually on processing fees.
Just massive numbers.
It's a 45% reduction in total payment costs. However, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fee reduction isn't even the real story here. The massive, completely hidden value is the structural elimination of involuntary churn.
Okay, yeah. We hear the term churn thrown around constantly in software. Let's clarify exactly how payment methods cause involuntary churn. This is when a customer actually likes the software, wants to keep paying for it, but the billing system just fails.
Exactly. Think about the physical nature of a credit card. It has a built-in expiration date. It can get lost at a bar.
Or stolen.
Right. Or it gets flagged by a bank's algorithm for a suspicious cross-border purchase and automatically canceled. Every time one of those events happens, the card is deactivated. And suddenly, any subscription tied to that card bounces.
And then the SaaS company has to send out those annoying automated emails begging you to log in, go find your wallet, and type in a new 16-digit number.
Which, let's be honest, a significant percentage of people simply never get around to doing.
Definitely, I've done that.
Right. The subscription dies not because the product was bad, but because the payment rail was fragile. The source calculates this specific SaaS company was losing 675,000 euros a year to involuntary churn alone.
That is brutal.
And when a customer churns, you don't just lose that month's revenue, you burn the entire lifetime value of that customer, and you waste whatever marketing money you spent to acquire them in the first place.
And this is where the A2A mechanism really shines, right?
Right.
Because bank accounts don't expire.
They don't. You might lose your physical debit card, but your underlying routing number and account number, they remain identical.
That's a huge distinction.
Huge. If a customer links their bank account via A2A for a monthly subscription, that connection remains stable for years, sometimes decades. For subscription models, securing a payment method that never expires is worth infinitely more to their valuation than the 0.5% savings on the processing fee.
Okay, so A2A is demonstrably cheaper, it's faster, and it's far more stable for merchants. But this introduces a massive game theory problem, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the traditional banks are making billions off those inflated 2.5% card interchange fees. Why would any major bank actively support an open banking technology that bypasses their own cash cow?
It's the classic incumbent's dilemma. It really comes down to a harsh, cold calculation regarding retention versus acquisition.
Walk me through that.
Let's say you're a regional bank making 8 million euros a year processing standard card payments for local businesses. A disruptive competitor enters your market offering those exact same businesses A2A payments at a fraction of the cost.
Okay.
If you refuse to offer A2A just to protect your card margins, and you lose just 10% of your merchant portfolio, the math gets incredibly ugly, incredibly fast.
Because you aren't just losing the payment processing fee.
Exactly. You're losing the entire commercial relationship. If a merchant leaves for a new processing partner, they eventually move their operating accounts. Then they move their payroll processing. Then they refinance their commercial real estate loans with the new bank.
Ouch.
Right. The cost of replacing those lost merchants is just astronomical. So the incumbent bank runs the numbers and realizes a brutal truth. Enabling A2A defensively might cannibalize their payment revenue by 15 or 20%.
Which hurts.
It hurts, but losing 10% of their merchant base completely threatens the survival of the entire institution.
So they're basically forced to cannibalize their own margins just to stop the bleeding. But the source mentions some banks aren't just playing defense, right? They're weaponizing this.
Yes. The early movers look at A2A and see an incredible acquisition tool. They offer A2A processing to merchants at, say, 0.6%. It's less profitable on a per-transaction basis than the old card rails, but it acts as a massive magnet.
To draw in everyone else's clients.
Exactly. They attract a flood of new commercial clients from the slow-moving legacy banks, massively increase their total transaction volume, and then they cross-sell highly profitable lending and treasury products.
What?
The late movers bleed merchants to the early movers, and by the time they finally adopt A2A, they're playing catch-up from a severely weakened market position.
So what does this all mean for the timeline? If the underlying infrastructure is already functional and European regulators are aggressively pushing open banking, how quickly does this shift happen?
Well, we aren't just talking about an idea on a whiteboard anymore. The source outlines a very specific 10-year horizon.
Okay, let's hear it.
The transition breaks down into 3 distinct phases. Right now, from 2025 to 2027, we're in the early adoption phase. We're looking at maybe 5 to 15% adoption in progressive European markets.
So the early adopters are just proving the model.
Right. The aggressive merchants are saving big money, and the banks are figuring out their defensive postures. Then, from 2027 to 2030, we hit the mainstream shift. Adoption scales to between 20 and 40%.
That's a huge jump.
It is. This is the tipping point where the competitive pressure actually forces the legacy card networks to start slashing their own fees just to maintain relevance.
And then from 2030 to 2035.
The source predicts a new equilibrium where A2A hits 40 to 60% of all domestic transactions.
Wow. This brings up a really fascinating strategic detail about the network payware. The breakdown notes they charge a flat 0.5%. But realistically, routing an API call is dirt cheap.
Super cheap.
The infrastructure costs might be like 15 cents, and the underlying payment rail costs under 5 cents. They could easily charge merchants 1.0%, secure a massive profit margin, and still look like a total hero compared to the 2.5% card fees.
They could.
So why are they leaving that much money on the table?
Because they deeply understand the mechanics of two-sided marketplaces and network effects. If you price your product at 1.0%, a merchant is happy to use it. But if you price it at 0.5%, the merchant becomes a zealous evangelist.
Oh, they do the marketing for you.
Exactly. They aggressively push their customers to scan the QR code or click the A2A payment link because the economic benefit to them is so profound.
That makes a lot of sense.
Additionally, by keeping the base cost at 0.5%, Payware allows their partner banks to mark it up a bit to maybe 0.7 or 0.8% and still offer an irresistible deal to the market.
So everyone wins.
Right. It's a calculated play to achieve universal, ubiquitous adoption as rapidly as possible. They are prioritizing the sheer size of the network over squeezing margin out of every early transaction.
Subsidizing the supply side of the market until the network is indispensable. It's brilliant. But, if you're listening to this and looking at your wallet, a natural question arises.
Will cards disappear entirely?
Yeah. Is your Visa or MasterCard destined for a museum? Are traditional credit cards actually going to die?
This raises an important question, but no, cards aren't going to die. But their role is going to be drastically reduced and repriced.
Okay.
The trajectory suggests that card networks simply won't be able to sustain 2.5% fees when a frictionless 0.5% alternative is universally available on everyone's smartphone.
They'll just be priced out.
Exactly. The networks will be forced to lower their baseline domestic fees to perhaps 1.0 or 1.5%. Ultimately, cards will retreat to the specific niches where they actually provide unique, hard-to-replicate value.
Things like unsecured consumer credit, right? Where the bank is actually lending you money for 30 days.
Exactly. Or international travel, where you're dealing with significant cross-border currency risk and you need global merchant dispute resolution.
That makes sense.
But for everyday domestic utility, buying groceries, paying for software subscriptions, grabbing a coffee at the corner shop A2A, will handle the vast bulk of that volume at a fraction of the historical cost.
It's a massive market rebalancing. We're moving from a monolithic system where card networks handle absolutely everything and extract a premium for it, to a diversified ecosystem where the payment method actually matches the economic utility of the transaction.
Beautifully said. The era of charging exorbitant premium rates for commodity data routing is basically ending. The cost difference between cards and A2A isn't just marginal, it's a profound structural shift.
Which really brings us full circle. We started by looking at a restaurant owner blindly paying 156,000 euros a year. Just accepting a 2.5% fee is an unavoidable law of nature.
Right.
But by breaking down the economics of payment processing, we've seen that moving digital money actually costs mere pennies. We've explored how the 5 toll booths of the legacy card system artificially inflate prices and, quite frankly, drain margins from independent businesses. And we've seen how A2A infrastructure uses API technology to bypass those toll booths entirely, saving merchants massive overhead and structurally eliminating the nightmare of involuntary churn for subscription businesses.
The technology is fully deployed, the regulatory environment supports it, the economic incentives for merchants make the transition completely inevitable.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If the multi-billion-dollar global payment infrastructure was artificially inflated by legacy monopolies for decades, simply because merchants and consumers accepted the high prices as normal.
It really makes you wonder.
It does. What other massive incumbency premiums are baked into your daily cost of living right now, just waiting for a structural disruption? Are you paying for the envelope maker, the mail carrier, and the mailbox in other areas of your life without even realizing it?
That is a great question to leave on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the hidden systems around you, and we'll catch you next time.
That's On the Wire, produced by Payware, the transaction resolution network for instant A2A payments. This episode was AI generated from Payware's published research and documentation. If something sparked a question, the full source material is available at payware.eu. If you work in payments at a bank, an ISV, or a merchant organization, and what you heard is relevant to what you're building, reach out. The conversation doesn't have to stop here. Subscribe to On the Wire wherever you listen to podcasts. The next episode is already waiting.